What if the greatest inheritance you could ever leave was not money? What if it was a seed that would multiply over generations and you had the opportunity to do that now? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video, is leaving a legacy that lasts. So, special day, June 23rd, 2025, which would be would have been my dad's 69th birthday. So big shout out, Terry Lawrence Cleaver, love you. You have made quite an impact, I believe, even despite what you thought. One of the last conversations that I had with my dad, he was real sorrowful, in his voice, and he stated that he felt as if he didn't leave us, my brother, my sister, and I, an inheritance. He didn't leave us anything. We didn't grow up rich. We didn't grow up poor either. I don't recall ever missing a meal as a child. And although I did not have the flashy name brand clothes, I was never without clothes on my back, shoes on my feet, a coat when it was cold, AC when it was hot. We were well provided for. But I told him, in response to, his statement that he didn't feel as if he left us anything, I told him that he had given us the greatest gift humanity has ever known. He opened that door to the invitation of coming to know Jesus, coming to accept Jesus for who he was, and beginning to develop that relationship, that personal relationship. He didn't invite us into religions and rituals, but really opened the door for us to develop this relationship with the Father, and greatest gift he could have ever given us. And so I reassured him and letting him know that. And what's so amazing about that is Proverbs 13:22, it says, a benevolent man or a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And then it states that, but the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. The treasures of the wicked are laid up for the righteous. I'm able to continue to multiply that seed that my dad planted in me, and through just me continuing my relationship with the Father, now I'm able to multiply that seed in my children. Big shout out to Neve Leanne, who was just baptized on Sunday, publicly showing her commitment to continuing that legacy and leaving that inheritance for her children and her children's children. So amazing, the things that we might take for granted. The little things, it's the unseen things that are the most, that's priceless, that you cannot put a tag on. My dad wasn't perfect by any means. But it took me getting to a specific level. And it wasn't just age that did it. There was an intentional, the thing about inheritances and generational legacies, generational wealth, generational impact is those things are done intentional. Those things are done intentional, not by happenstance, not by random. I had to become very intentional about ensuring that my children were greater than me. My children understood more. The things that I felt I might have lacked as a child, I am intentional about instilling and nurturing and nourishing those things in my children. Of course, to the best, not perfectly, but progressively. And so the amazing thing about that scripture there, Proverbs 13:22, beginning with the opening line, talking about benevolence. Like, benevolence is not just generosity, right? It's a posture of righteousness. Righteousness produces two things in us when it comes to leaving an inheritance, and that's resource. The second one is reputation. In the small town that I grew up in, like, you could ask anyone about my dad, and most would have great things to say about him. And of course, like any of us, those who know us more intimately might see these different sides of us. It doesn't change that whether I'm a good man or not. It's just that people know us more intimately. We're able to be more vulnerable. They're going to see other sides of us. And so growing up, there were sides of us that I saw of my dad that other people didn't see. And oftentimes I would question his authenticity around them. But he was in process too. I really had to forgive that and understand and give grace, because he was in process. And yes, I had to forgive because there were things that he didn't do perfectly. Just the same way I'm consistently asking forgiveness for my children when I make a mistake. And so I had to learn that and really grow through that and giving grace. But resource and reputation are intentional. These are intentional things, ways that you leave an inheritance for your children's children. And like, who you are will echo way longer than the possessions that you had. The number 2 thing that I pull from Proverbs 13:22 is inheritance isn't just financial, it's formation. So we're not talking just money. We're talking, when we're talking formation, we're talking wisdom. We're talking values. We're talking the prayer, like faith, your word seed, different things that you're intentional about doing those are the things that continue to echo. They will leave an impact. These are the things that I'm instilling and nurturing and planting and watering inside of my children to multiply the efforts from the initial planting of seed in me. The nature of inheritance isn't merely financial, and it's what we live and how we live now that becomes seed for the generations, for my children's children. And the number 3 thing that I pull from this scripture is, I spoke a little bit about being intentional, about when it says children's children, that implies some intentionality. Okay, it just doesn't happen on accident, right? You got to be intentional. It happens on assignment through the development of routines. It's so important. One thing that I often questioned, because at home my dad was more, of course, relaxed more. He was in his home, his sanctuary. So there was things that didn't always align. Okay, he's learning, he's growing, but oftentimes the walk didn't match the talk, right? And I understood that. That in order for that, a big key for me is to be intentional about those things aligning, because oftentimes our children are watching us more than they're actually listening to us, right? God doesn't necessarily align with our ambition, but he will align with our assignment. So look, money is key, and money is going to always solve the money problems. But another part of legacy that people don't mention is the inheritance of faith, right? The spiritual things that are planted into our children and they planted into their children. Those things often go untalked about. But on this day, I'm celebrating my dad for leaving that inheritance in us. So in closing, family, like, these things take time, right? It takes faith for the inheritance, the building up of inheritance to take place. Don't stop now. Keep building. And you're not just building you're building for generations. So be intentional about building you. Be intentional about seeking your Father. As I was journaling this morning, like, wealth is about stewardship. The process of stewardship happens whenever the gardener allows himself to be gardened. And the allowance of the gardener to be gardened is often in relation to its proximity to the gardener. Get close to the Father. Let him garden your heart. Let him continue to sow seeds on that fertile ground, right? And then you can continue to sow seeds into your children, leaving that eternal inheritance. If this stirred something in you, don't just let it stop at inspiration. Drop a fire emoji in the comments and just to say, like, hey, I'm committed to living a legacy of faith for my children and my children's children. And this inheritance, this eternal inheritance and legacy of faith is not only for you, but it's also for me and all of us eternally.
I've been working hard, I've been
See y'all
playing
on the
cards,
next
I've been
video.
trying hard.